The first time Alara Finch stepped onto Varelian Station, she felt like a tiny speck in a universe that already knew too much. The station was enormous, a gleaming circle of metal and glass floating above 1,000 planets, humming with energy and life. Ships of every shape and size moved in perfect choreography, docking with ease that made Earth's spaceports feel like playgrounds in comparison. Alara, the only human in her class, walked slowly, her hands brushing against the railing, trying to absorb everything. She was smaller than most of her classmates, her muscles not as strong, her senses not as sharp, but there was something in her chest, a steady beat that reminded her she had survived much more than she looked like she could. Her classmates from other worlds stared at her with curiosity and skepticism. The Selnari twins, thin and silver-skinned, whispered to each other as she passed. Their telepathic murmurs were soft but unmistakable. "Look at her. She is so small. What could a human do here?" The Drakkar girl, taller and covered in natural armor plates, tilted her head and gave a polite, almost dismissive nod. Alara ignored them. She had learned long ago that staring back in anger only wasted energy. The academy itself was both beautiful and intimidating. Transparent corridors curved like rivers leading to classrooms, training chambers, and living quarters. Every species moved with a grace that made her own steps feel clumsy. Yet, despite the feeling of being out of place, she kept walking, keeping her head high. She knew she had something they did not, something invisible yet powerful. Humans had a way of surviving when the odds were against them. Her first day of training was in the simulation halls. These were giant chambers that could replicate any environment. The instructors, holographic figures of countless alien forms, welcomed the students with smiles that were almost too perfect. Today's exercise was simple, or at least that was what the instructors said. The goal was to navigate through a simulated disaster, a crumbling habitat with gravity fluctuations, oxygen drops, and unpredictable hazards. Alara's team was assigned immediately. Her teammates, all aliens, glanced at her skeptically. The Drakkar girl, named Kalira, had a gaze that could pierce through walls, and she was already frowning at the idea of working with a human. The Selnari twins, Viri and Laura, flitted around, their long fingers twitching in anticipation of using telepathy to control the situation. They barely acknowledged Alara. As the simulation began, the environment shifted. The floor vibrated slightly, lights flickered, and artificial alarms blared. Gravity shifted unexpectedly, making it hard to keep balance. Some aliens slipped, others floated helplessly. Humans had weaker muscles, yes, but they had something else, adaptability. Alara felt the pull and push of shifting gravity, took a deep breath, and started moving calmly, helping others adjust. "Stay calm," she said, her voice steady despite the chaos. "Follow me." One step at a time, the others stared at her, surprised. No one had expected a human to speak with such authority. Kalira frowned, but even she had to admit the suggestion made sense. Slowly, the team began to follow Alara. She led them down narrow corridors, pointing out the safest routes, improvising where the simulation had blocked passages. She realized that telepathy alone could not solve this problem. Coordination and patience were required. Viri, the more curious Selnari twin, whispered, "How does she know what to do?" Laura shook her head. "She is just human. They are fragile. Fragile beings should not survive this." But as Alara guided the group, their doubts slowly began to fade. The challenges increased. Oxygen levels dropped in some rooms. Gravity became stronger in others. Many cadets panicked, trying to fly or jump without thinking. Alara, however, remembered lessons from her Earth training. Astronauts were taught to remain calm, measure everything carefully, and conserve energy. She instructed the others to breathe slowly, ration their movements, and trust each other. Hours seemed to pass in the simulation. Alara moved continuously, never pausing, thinking of ways to solve each problem. She tore pieces of her uniform to patch leaks in small oxygen vents, tied makeshift ropes to help the weaker cadets climb, and encouraged them constantly. Every time a cadet stumbled, she was there with a steadying hand. By the time the group reached the central hub, where the gravity was stable but the main doors had jammed, everyone was exhausted. Kalira's armor plates were scratched. The Selnari twins' skin shimmered with nervous energy, but none had given up. Alara was breathing hard, her clothes damp with sweat, but she smiled. "I know we can get through this," she said. "We just need to think, work together, and stay calm." The others looked at her in awe. The small human, weaker and smaller, had guided them through the toughest part of the simulation. They had relied on strength and special abilities in the past, but here it was reasoning, patience, and endurance that mattered most. The final obstacle was a puzzle door that required both strength and precision. Kalira tried to force it open, using her natural armor strength. Viri and Laura tried to manipulate it with telepathy. None of their efforts worked. Ilara stepped forward. She studied the mechanism, traced the movements with her hands, and carefully adjusted the locks. Her fingers, not strong like Kalira's, were precise. Her eyes, trained to notice small details, spotted a sequence that no one else had noticed. With a quiet click, the door opened. The group stepped through and the simulation ended. The instructors applauded, their holographic forms nodding. "You've completed the trial," one said, a smile in their alien face. "Few groups manage this, and fewer do it with cooperation rather than raw power." Ilara smiled, but her joy was quiet. She was not thinking of praise. She was thinking of how the others had reacted, the look in their eyes when they realized a human could succeed where they had struggled. She felt pride, not because she had been the strongest, but because she had remained calm and resourceful. Later, as the cadets walked back to their quarters, Kalira spoke, her voice low. "You surprised me. I did not think a human could do this." Ilara shrugged. "Strength is not always about muscle. Sometimes it is about endurance, patience, and focus." Viri and Laura, still whispering among themselves, nodded slowly. "Perhaps humans are more capable than we thought," Viri admitted. By the time they reached their rooms, the initial skepticism had faded. The other cadets began to see humans differently. They were small and physically weaker, yes, but they had something the others did not. A quiet courage, a steady mind, and a will that refused to give up. That night, Ilara lay on her bunk, looking out at the stars through the transparent ceiling. She thought of Earth, of the oceans and mountains she had once explored, of the struggles and challenges that had shaped her species. She realized that she had not just survived the simulation, she had brought others along with her. And in the eyes of her classmates, she could see the spark of admiration beginning to form. The next day would bring new challenges, new trials, and new opportunities to prove herself. But for now, Ilara felt a quiet sense of satisfaction. She had shown, without any weapons or brute force, that humans could be a force to be reckoned with, not because of muscle, not because of technology, but because of the strength that comes from heart, mind, and spirit. As she drifted into sleep, the alien girls whispered among themselves, still astonished. They had come to Verelion Station thinking humans were weak, small, and fragile. But now they had seen something far greater, a human who could guide, inspire, and endure. And in that moment, they knew the galaxy had underestimated humanity in ways that would take a very long time to forget. The next morning, the Academy's corridors were alive with chatter and movement. Students from countless worlds hurried to their classes, carrying datapads, tools, or sometimes just their thoughts. Ilara Finch walked among them quietly, her mind focused. The events of the previous day were still fresh in her memory. The other cadets now looked at her with respect, but she did not let it change her. Strength, she knew, was not something one boasted about. It was something shown through action. Her first class that day was in the engineering dome, a giant chamber filled with machines that hummed, whirred, and floated in midair. The instructors announced a new trial. "Construct a life support system for a stranded station on an asteroid," they said. "You will have limited tools and must work as a team. Creativity and logic will matter more than strength." Ilara's team consisted of some of the same cadets as before. Kalira, the armored Drikkar girl, was still skeptical but willing to cooperate. The Selnari twins, Viri and Laura, hovered around, whispering strategies to each other. They looked at Ilara with curiosity, as if waiting to see whether her calm intelligence yesterday was a one-time fluke. The trial began immediately. The asteroid model was a massive floating structure inside the dome. Its oxygen systems were damaged, and several sections were unstable. Pieces of metal floated freely, and a low hum indicated the life support system was failing. Some of the alien cadets panicked, unsure how to start. Ilara stepped forward. "Let's assess the situation first," she said, her voice steady. "We need to find the areas most in danger and decide what we can fix first." The others looked at her. This time there was no whisper of doubt. They had learned that humans could think under pressure. Kalira handed Ilara a floating datapad, and the Selnari twins offered their telepathic abilities to scan the systems. Ilara combined their skills with her own observations, moving quickly but carefully. She noticed something that others had missed. A small vent near the core module was cracked, leaking air faster than the others. If it was not repaired, the entire system could fail. Without hesitation, Ilara directed Kalira to stabilize the section with her strength, while Viri and Laura helped her hold the delicate sensors in place. Ilara herself crawled into the narrow vent, using her small size to reach areas too tight for the others. Minutes passed, and slowly, the team's efforts began to pay off. Airflow stabilized, sensors aligned, and the life support system hummed at a steady rhythm. The instructors watched silently, clearly impressed by how efficiently the team worked. "What amazes me," one of the instructors said later, "is not just the result but the way you united such a diverse team. Leadership, logic, and calmness under pressure, these are rare qualities." Ilara smiled, but she did not linger on praise. She was already thinking ahead, imagining the next challenge. For her, the trial was not about recognition, it was about solving problems and helping others. After the class, the alien girls approached her. Kalira's eyes, usually so hard and unreadable, softened. You make things seem simple," she admitted. "I do not understand how you think so clearly under stress." Ilara shrugged. "We all have strengths. I just focus on using mine." Viri and Laura nodded in agreement. "Humans must have learned this from living on a dangerous world," Viri said. "Your minds, your endurance. It is unlike anything we expected." The days passed, and Ilara continued to impress. Every trial seemed designed to test something beyond brute strength: teamwork, problem-solving, creativity. When a transport module malfunctioned mid-flight, she devised a pulley system using only spare cables and a few floating tools to save the simulated passengers. When a communications satellite failed to transmit signals, she rewired the circuits using small, delicate adjustments no larger species could manage. Her reputation grew quietly. Other cadets began to seek her advice, not because they were afraid of her, but because they recognized that she could see solutions where they could not. Yet Ilara remained humble. She never boasted, never flaunted her abilities. Strength, she believed, was not about showing off. It was about helping others succeed. One day, the instructors announced a final challenge for the semester. "You will travel to a simulated planet with extreme conditions. Your goal is to stabilize the environment and ensure the survival of its inhabitants. Use your knowledge, your skills, and your judgment. Violence is forbidden. The test will measure intelligence, endurance, and moral courage." Ilara's team was chosen immediately. They entered the simulation, a vast rocky world with fierce winds, shifting terrain, and fragile structures scattered across the landscape. The other cadets hesitated, unsure how to navigate the harsh environment. Ilara, as always, moved forward. "First, we need to assess the risks," she said. "Then we can decide what can be done safely. One step at a time." They approached a village of delicate floating structures that resembled nests, held in place by energy fields. The energy fields were failing, and without repair, the structures would collapse. Kalira wanted to push them into place, but Ilara shook her head. "That could break them. We need precision." Instead, she guided the cadets to use tools and makeshift supports. The Selnari twins projected telepathic calm over the villagers, helping them stay still while repairs were made. Ilara herself crawled into the smallest spaces, adjusting wires and energy conduits with hands steady despite the wind and instability. Hours passed. The team worked tirelessly, following her instructions, learning from her patience and clarity. Slowly, the village stabilized. The energy fields hummed steadily, and the floating structures became secure. The instructors observed in silence, clearly impressed by the cooperation and intelligence displayed. When the simulation ended, the cadets were exhausted but exhilarated. The alien girls who had once doubted Ilara now looked at her with genuine admiration. Kalira placed a heavy hand on her shoulder, a gesture of respect in her species. "You have shown a strength I cannot match," she said quietly. Ilara shook her head. "It is not about strength," she replied. "It is about focus, patience, and helping others," Viri and Laura whispered to each other. "We have underestimated humans for too long," Viri said. "Their courage, their endurance, their ability to keep thinking when others panic. It is extraordinary." By the time they returned to the academy, word of Ilara's abilities had spread across the station. Cadets from other classes watched her with curiosity, many asking for advice or simply to observe how she approached problems. Humans, once thought fragile and weak, were now admired for qualities no other species could replicate. That night, Alara lay on her bunk, looking out at the stars again. She thought of Earth, of the oceans, deserts, and mountains that had shaped her people. She thought of the challenges her species had faced, surviving on a world that demanded ingenuity, endurance, and heart. And she realized that every moment at Verelion Station had reminded her of why humans could thrive anywhere. Her thoughts were interrupted by a soft knock on the door. Kalira entered, carrying a small tray of food. "I wanted to thank you," she said, "not just for helping us succeed in the trials, but for showing us that strength is not only physical." "You have inspired us all," Alara smiled. "We all have our own strengths," she said. "Mine just happened to show up in these situations." Viri and Laura appeared next, smiling shyly. "We are astonished," Laura admitted. "You have taught us something more important than any skill we have learned here." "Humans, you are remarkable," Alara laughed softly. "Remarkable is just another word for trying your best and helping others do the same." Over the next few weeks, Alara continued to lead her team through new challenges, each one more complex than the last. From repairing malfunctioning transport systems to creating sustainable habitats, she demonstrated patience, creativity, and endurance at every turn. The alien girls who had once doubted her now looked to her as a guide, not because she was stronger, but because she was steadfast, reliable, and calm under pressure. By the end of the semester, the instructors called the cadets together for a final assembly. Alara's team was recognized not for brute strength, not for flashy skills, but for their cooperation, intelligence, and moral courage. The alien girls gave her gestures of respect in their own ways, and even the instructors admitted that her presence had changed the way they viewed humans. As the cadets dispersed, Kalira approached her one last time. "I will never forget what you have shown us," she said. "Strength is not only in the body, and now I see, perhaps humans have the greatest strength of all." Alara smiled, looking out at the stars. She did not feel pride in the way others might expect. Instead, she felt gratitude. Gratitude for the chance to prove herself, for the opportunity to help others, and for the reminder that strength could take many forms. And in that quiet moment, floating above 1,000 worlds on Verelion Station, the galaxy began to understand that human strength was not in fighting, not in weapons, not in physical might, it was in endurance. Compassion, intelligence, and heart. Humans had survived, thrived, and inspired, proving that even the smallest, weakest species could astonish the universe.